Hi, buddy.
Hey, Matt.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yep, just yeah, I guess going through the week here, and there's always seems like there's all sorts of things happening, but yeah, overall things are pretty good.
Very good. So I guess maybe a quick introduction. My friend Jonathan Schwier, I've known for several years now. Gosh, we're probably going on close to 20 years, really.
I think
15
so.
plus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Musician extraordinaire, played many gigs with him. He's done a lot. Cruise ships, different types of bands, has taken lessons all over the world, more or less. Great stories, but just kind of wanted to chat with you and talk about your journey. You know, some of the things you've done, some of how you ended up. You know, obviously, we both know where you are now in your life. I just think it's a really cool arc. So,
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I remember I think the first time I met you, I don't know if you remember, but it always makes me laugh when I think about it because I kind of saw you from a distance, but there were so many teachers at that place where we were teaching, and uh,
yeah,
I
that place. We won't name that place.
the place. Well, but yeah, the funny thing was they had those guitars in the lesson rooms, and somehow I ended up, I don't know, I picked up one of these guitars and for a lesson. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to get my guitar out of the case, or I forgot I had a lesson and the kid was in the room or something. And the funny thing was, I just grabbed one of these guitars and it happened to be your guitar from your studio.
Do
I
you
mean,
remember, was it like the Strat or was it the yellowish one? Do you
I
remember?
well, I'm kind of remembering it as the yellowish one,
Yeah, okay.
and
Yeah.
it was a a tradition model.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. But it was like the
And
shredder version.
uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I think it had new strings on it that you probably put on, so it actually was kind of in tune more.
I
And
didn't put them on.
but anyway, but yeah, I think the first time was, you came to the lesson room and because you didn't have your guitar. And so I said, "Oh, is this your guitar? Oh, I'm sorry about that." I gave you the guitar because that I guess that was the one. It was in your studio.
Always hanging in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, but that was really funny, and I always got a laugh out of that because. And then I remember one day it was that guy Steve that worked. One of the Steves that worked there. He played a joke on me like that on purpose, and he took my Gibson 165. I don't still have that guitar actually, but I used to bring that to teach a lot of times. Not sure why, because it could have been damaged, but it was on the stand, and he came in when I wasn't there. He took it and he hid the guitar in the store,
Oh,
and
wow.
so, so anyway, these are the funny moments that I remember. Um, but I'll
Well,
tell you, just to kind of bridge like into what you're talking about. One interesting thing though, because we have a lot of stories about the place, where we met and guitar
sure.
teaching. But there was a teacher there named Maggie.
Yeah.
Okay, you remember Maggie.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, she is really the reason. I mean, we're convinced that God actually used her to somehow bring redemption into my life, but also my wife Danelle's, because what happened was many years later, uh, before I had met Danelle, I was teaching up in Fishers at a different place, and Maggie taught there too. And she was pregnant and was getting ready to go on maternity leave. And so she was at a Starbucks with some symphony friends of hers. They were getting ready to play a gig that night. And it just happened to be that Danelle, uh, she was going to that Starbucks to meet her cousin at that same time. And so Danelle shows up and she recognized Maggie, who I guess she knew 10 years prior. They both played in the Muncie Symphony or some symphony together. And so anyway, she went up and said, "Hey, I think I know you." And they caught up and figured out how they remembered each other. And then Maggie said, "Oh, I'm getting ready to go on maternity leave and I need a substitute teacher for my gig in Fishers just for 4 months." And anyway, Danelle had been just praying about that because she needed a gig for 4 months, and she had just come home from Korea as a missionary
Hmm.
and was here for like 4 months, 4 or 5 months. So anyway, that's how it all worked out. Danelle took the gig, and then I met her at the same facility because we both were there. And you know, basically, the first thing I thought maybe she was a Buddhist because I knew she was from Asia. She told me she came from Korea, and so I had I had just become a Christian a few months before that, and so I was just thinking about how I could try to share the gospel with her, and so nothing happened for weeks and months. I mean, I just would kind of plant seeds, but never thought anything of it. And then eventually I realized, oh, she's a Christian and she's actually a missionary. And that's when I asked her if she'd have coffee so we could share our stories about Jesus, because
Yeah.
I didn't know anyone really that was a Christian. Uh, Not many people. So anyway, and then the story goes on, but it's just interesting how it all goes back to you know
Well, yeah, I
so,
mean, as they say, the Lord works in mysterious ways, right?
yes.
That connection. So that's very cool. So you and I had dinner, I don't know what's it been a few weeks ago now when you guys were in town, and we talked a little bit about this, but um you had said that before that you had mentioned that you became a Christian, and I guess I never realized that you weren't,
Hmm.
but you had said that quite the opposite. You said no, you really weren't. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, I was raised in a Catholic family.
Hmm.
And I think as a child, I think that I did have a sense of Jesus watching over me. And, I just felt protection when I thought of Jesus. And I felt like the Lord was watching over me and everything was okay. But I think by the time I got into like middle school and then really high school, I think that's when I started to really question faith, really question everything, actually. I, even my friends that I knew from middle school, they weren't really my friends anymore. And
Right.
I experienced some nuns that were very verbal and, really strict. And, some people might say, well, what's the fine line between strict and just being a little bit abusive,
Sure.
you know, and then being bullied and then all the while I would go to the Catholic mass once a week. Uh, Actually, it wasn't once a week, but it was pretty often in the Catholic school. And so I was really questioning, like, is any of this actually real? Uh, so then by the time I went to college, I mean, I was interested in God, but I really didn't think it was real. I didn't think the Bible was literally real. So that's why I studied philosophy. And I think probably the biggest thing that was positive though in college was my janitor from the dorm where I was staying. He was a really cool guy. He played guitar. He had long hair, and we just hit it off really well. But he actually lived in a house that he claimed was haunted, and that was interesting to me because I had pretty much decided that I was agnostic. and there might be a God, and well, once you die, you kind of figure it out, but you just try to be a decent person, and that's the best that you can do. That's what I thought. But anyway, I would go to his house. He would invite me over, and we'd play guitar. And his wife played guitar. They were in a band, and so and it was this house that was from about the Civil War time in the
Mm.
19th. So it was an old, creepy house, and I experienced some things that were just you could say creepy or just things that are not explainable. Like,
Which prepared you for your apartment later on in life.
yeah, exactly. Like and I won't go through the whole story, but one thing I remember is there was a room upstairs, and they showed me the room, and they said that the door would never stay closed, and it was a
Mm.
latch door. You could hear
Okay.
it latch, but after you'd go downstairs for a while, you would come back upstairs and the door would be open again,
Mm.
and they just got used to it. So and stuff like that. That
Well, I'm sure they figured that it's not here to harm us, or it would have already. So
Yeah,
it is what it is.
yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of stories about that and that family, but yeah. So then that is what led me into being open minded about the paranormal, and I didn't really know what I believed, but I thought, well, there's probably a spiritual realm, and I mean, this janitor, he seems like a really honest, cool guy. I mean, I know he's not lying. I thought, well, it's possible that he's done some drugs and maybe he hallucinates.
Right.
I mean, just to be
Right.
honest,
Yeah.
I
Those guitar players. Yeah.
so. But anyway, it just kind of opened up that door, though. Oh yeah, and his wife was a spiritual medium, so
Oh,
she's
wow.
into Reiki is
Yeah.
what you call it.
Yep.
And she would go to seminars and things about how to do healings on people, and so I stayed in touch with them. From actually, I'm still in touch with her. uh, John, the janitor, he actually passed away a couple of years ago, but I was friends with them my whole life, and I think the door was open, and I just started to experiment just more with spirituality, but also pursuing philosophy and looking for the truth wherever I could try to find it.
Mm.
But yeah, back to what you're saying, though. I mean, as far as Christianity, I mean, I tried to be respectful of people that called themselves Christians, but I still didn't really think it was actually real.
Mm.
I mean, I thought, well, the Bible has a lot of wisdom in it, and it's a great story, and I believe Jesus was a real person. I just thought he was probably a teacher that he was crucified. I think most people believe that, but
Yeah.
I didn't really think he rose from the dead. I thought maybe in a spiritual sense he rose, and but not literally. Um, but I'll tell you this, though, I was really very interested in the Bible. I mean, I read it once through, and I liked the Gospel of Mark, and I liked it enough that I actually wrote my own philosophy. So I wrote my own philosophy. I couldn't find the truth in any man-made philosophy, so I thought, well, like a true existentialist, I'll just kind of put together my own, and then I'll live by it, and maybe that will fulfill me.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting is that when I physically wrote the treatise, I was basing it on the outline of the Gospel of Mark. And in the point of the treatise was analyzing the person of Jesus, but again, philosophically, it wasn't, I didn't believe in him. I wasn't a Christian, but it was like, I was fixated on him as a person, and I built a philosophy around him. Now, again, though, I would say it missed the mark because I tried to live by that philosophy and I still wasn't fulfilled.
So what ended up making you turn the corner? I mean, I know some things happened in your life with someone else we knew from teaching there, and things got I don't want to say dark. That's not really the word, but some hardships came up and whatnot. But what do you think really made you turn the corner? Because from my perspective, you really went from, well, like I said, I didn't think of you as a non-Christian person. You were just Schwier. You're a good guy. I like you all as well. We get along. We hang out. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then the thing I think that shocked me is when all of a sudden you were like, "Hey, dude, I'm moving. You're never gonna guess I got a gig teaching at a Catholic school." And that was the part for me that was like, "Wait, what?" So so obviously you were deeper into your journey in faith by the time that took place.
Yes.
So what kind of made you really, like I said, turn the corner?
Well, I think that this goes back to things that I learned actually in seminary, because when I had that moment, and people call it different things, but the technical term that some people use is regeneration. Some people say it's when you're born again, when you're born from above, in that moment where you just, the lights go on and you know who Jesus is, and you believe. And in that moment, what I experienced was you can't turn it off. Like, once you realize who Jesus really is, it's like the lights go on and you can't turn them off anymore.
Hmm.
It's kind of like, in a small way, they used to say this when you study music, and in college, you go to a music school and they say you'll never listen to music the same way. I know it's kind of a weird metaphor, but it's kind of like that when you experience Jesus and you really know who he is, he shows you, you can't ever deny what you know. Now you can still sin, and you can I guess you could reject God, and I know people debate these things, but what was really interesting, though, for me, again, is just that I cannot not believe that he's real. But then the second step is repenting of your life, and I would say that's your choice. I mean, that's a person that makes the commitment. They say, okay, now I know who he is. Now I was going this way, but now I need to go this way. I need to walk towards Jesus. And even if I don't know what that means yet, I'm just going to walk with Jesus, and then he'll teach me
Yeah.
somehow. God will be my teacher. But then the last step is really surrendering. It's really where you're walking with Jesus, and then you say, okay, I surrender my entire life. And maybe he tells you to, he says, okay, now's the time. Or maybe it's just a realization that a person has. But however you look at it, it seems that the Bible's pretty clear that eventually there has to be that moment where you surrender. And really, it goes back to the story of Adam and Eve. It's when God redeems in you, what Adam and Eve didn't get right. Where you say, okay, I'm going to do it God's way. I'm not going to do it my way. I'm just going to I'm going to trust that God's way is better for my life.
Yeah.
And so, to answer your question with the Catholic school, it was that, my entire life, I'll say this, my entire life, I used to make fun of things. I mean, a couple things. I just would, number one is getting married. I never, ever, I mean, I remember being 12 years old and I was telling my cousins and my friends, I just said, I am never going to get married. That is the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
I mean, why not just have a girlfriend, and you can love somebody and you don't need to get married. And I would have all these reasons, in the state of Indiana, your wife can just divorce you and take half your stuff. And
Right.
then and later on, I'd say, there's so many reasons, or so many things that you can't control in life. Like if you're born with Down syndrome, or you're born with a problem with your metabolism, and or this or that, and
Right.
all these things. Or maybe I was born into a family, and my dad died when I was 2, and I can't help it, and all these things. But then I would say, but marriage, that's something that you can avoid. You can actually
You can make
just,
the choice. Yeah.
yeah, you can make a choice. It's kind of like not running out of gas in your car. Of
Yeah.
all the issues with your car, my dad used to talk about this. He'd say, the one thing you can control is not running out of gas.
Right. Yeah.
All you
That's a
have
good
to do
point.
is go, go to the gas station.
Right. Yeah.
That's all you have to do. And so anyway, so he had no mercy for people that would run out of gas, and my mom would sometimes run out of gas. Anyway, um, but so the other one, though, that I always said that I just would never want to do. I mean, you just have to be out of your mind. Is to teach middle school. I mean, of all the things you could do for
Right.
for a living, even if you wanted to be a teacher, if you wanted to put yourself through that, you know, you don't have to teach middle school. You could teach high school, you could teach college, you could even teach preschool, but
I
you
would
would have
almost
to
think
be,
high school would be worse than middle school, but maybe not.
well, okay, now you might, yeah, yes, maybe some people might think that. Um, but having subbed, I was a substitute teacher for a little while,
Okay.
a long, long time ago. And high school, usually it seemed like a lot of the kids are pretty mellow. But anyway, so I have stories I could tell about that.
Sure.
Um, but anyway, it's just, again, as I surrendered to Jesus, I mean, one of the hardest things that I did was marry my wife, even though she was everything that I'd ever want in a
Yeah.
wife. And God knew that, and He presented that person to me. And I mean, she had saved herself and everything for her husband, and she was out there on the mission field. I mean, she's a God loving person, genuine, you know. And God brought her into my life, but it was faith. I mean, He was testing my faith
Yeah.
to actually accept what God was giving me. And I know these are complicated subjects, because we start to think, well, how much of this is just God and how much of it is me choosing. And
Well, I
but
mean, and that's a great point. So you talked about, surrendering. And I said, I'll admit, we talked about it over dinner. That's a hard thing for me because I just don't get it. Meaning, I feel like I'm surrendering, but then I guess maybe I'm not because I feel if I'm not doing what I normally do or making my own efforts, that am I still trying to control my outcome versus just, throwing up my hands and going, well, whatever happens, happens. So I feel like I'm in the middle all the time. Like, am I surrendering or am I not surrendering? I'm trying to surrender, but maybe I'm not doing it the right way. So I really struggle with that.
well, yeah, and I think I should be more specific too, because I would agree. I think that surrender, it's not like it's just a one time deal. It reminds me of when Jesus said, I'm thinking of Luke chapter 9, verse 24, I believe. He said, and He said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily. And that word daily, it's in the Gospel of Luke, but it wasn't in the other Gospels. It
Yeah.
wasn't in Matthew, didn't include it, but when Luke wrote his Gospel, he put that word in there, I think, to make sure that people understand that, the disciples would understand that it's a daily choice. And Paul later wrote about crucifying the flesh, and how it's a daily choice to do that. So it's really interesting because what you just mentioned, it reminds me of something I just listened to yesterday on a podcast. And it's about the self life. And it was this podcast about spiritual warfare
Mhm.
and how the other kingdom, so that the devil will try to go after you specifically with that, with the self life. And just to be really quick and simple about it, it's like that constant issue every day of, when do I make it about me?
Right.
and and when, I think it could happen any moment. Like, the example that guy used was, he was a Hertz member in the airport, the car
Yeah.
rental
Yeah.
Hertz.
Mhm.
And, normally he has his car ready to go. He's a golden member and everything's easy. And then he went up to the counter. They didn't even have his reservation, and they made him stand in the line. And of course, then he wants to contest that, and his pride starts to get the better of him,
Yeah.
and he wants to argue his case. And it's like, in the blink of an eye, the enemy and the other kingdom, they know how to go after you. And in the blink of an eye, they can get you to almost forget momentarily that, okay, I'm supposed to love God, I'm supposed to love my neighbor, and I know that we're being tested every moment, and we're being trained. The Holy Spirit is really training us through suffering, so that when we get to heaven, we can reign, so that we're ready to do what he wants us to do in heaven. I know that's a whole nother conversation, but um, so, but yeah, I think that I think it's a daily struggle to really surrender the
Yeah.
self. And some days it's like everything falls into place. I don't know, it seems like the Lord just wants you to rest in him and just have a good day of it's not too hard. And then the next day nothing goes right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you hit every light on red, and you're late, and it's like this. And then it's just about, how am I going to react to all this?
That's
And
fair. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Which I tend to, I would say, if I'm being honest, I probably am normally more negative about it than positive. I have my moments when I remember, and I just, you remain thankful for the things that you have and the good things in your life. But, you know, 7 times out of 10, I get mad and frustrated, and the why God, why, so yeah, I struggle with that a lot, if I'm being honest. So that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the book of Job is difficult because, when you read it, you realize that the devil actually goes to God accusing us, and then God allows things to happen to Job, you know. And so I think that in the spiritual realm, I mean, God does everything for good and God is in control, but being perfectly just, he allows things, he allows us to be tested.
Right.
And I think that's where Christians sometimes can fall short, because, sometimes we forget that we're in a battle. That, I mean, Jesus paid it all on the cross, and he has authority over everything. But there's still that element of our faith where we have to claim what he has done for us. We have to claim it, because these entities are still down here, and they're still questioning us and trying to trick us and trying to make us make that agreement that the cross doesn't matter, and that Jesus's blood didn't really do what the Bible says that it clearly did for us and does for us.
Yeah.
So there's that. yeah, I would say it's that walking out our faith every day where we have to claim those promises as true for us.
So this is completely way off topic, but I was talking to my son today at lunch, and he was just asking some questions about you and how we knew each other, and some background. And one of the things that I brought up were, of course, some of your stories. Um, I was trying to remember the story of one of your cruise ship gigs. Now, I remember some of the stories about how you'd say, the rest of the band was all playing in a different key and it was just horrible, and, some of the musically funny ones. But you had one where a guy, if I remember correctly, jumped,
Mm, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Can you tell me that story again?
yeah. Well, I think I know the one that you mean, because there have been other stories where funny stories where like the drummer in the band fell or jumped off the back of the ship and they went back and they got him. And
Yeah, no, no, this was a dark one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, this one was, yeah, I remember that one. So that was in 2011, actually. And I was on the Celebrity Eclipse, which for that time that was like the flagship of the entire fleet. And
Yeah.
I remember they had me do this special audition for the ship too. It was really interesting because they wanted to make sure that you're good, I was good enough to play
Sure.
play in the orchestra. And I got on the ship, and just to give some background, I mean, it was a nice ship. I
Yeah.
I was in the crew area, and it looked like a hotel,
Mhm.
which is unusual for a cruise ship. And I thought I was in the guest area, so I was trying to find my room, and then I realized, oh, my room's right here. This is a crew area.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And then I went into the crew mess, and it was like all yellows, the yellow room. And then they had another crew mess, which is where you eat. It's the mess hall, and
Yep.
the other one was red, all red, and so they had all these colorations everywhere to sort of uplift your spirit and make you feel more lively and happy, I guess. And I guess. And anyway, so that gives you some background. But what happened with that situation was there was a code Oscar, and I was down in this crew game room. They had a free arcade games, so
Okay.
you didn't have to put the quarter in. And they had my favorite game, which was the buck hunter with the
Oh
deer that
yeah,
jump.
yeah, shooting. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't know why. I like that game, and it's kind of a morbid game, really. Um, but anyway, I was playing that game, and I heard Code Oscar, and I said Code Oscar Deck Six, and I knew what that meant. Code Oscar meant that someone fell or jumped overboard, and Deck Six was that's the outside deck around the ship.
Mm.
So every cruise ship typically has a deck where you could go out and walk around the ship, or you could run, you could jog, and
Yeah.
so that's where it was. So I knew someone just fell overboard. So I went up there really fast, and I realized there's nobody up here. I was there all by myself, and I was looking in the. Yeah, they tell you to look water, and if you see someone, to keep your eye on them, and then if there's a life, of course, um, like a buoy or something, you can throw it out to them. But
Now this was
you're
this was
supposed
at
to keep your eye on them.
this was at night, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it
I
was
mean, it
just
was it
pitch
was
black
night.
out
It
there.
was nighttime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the chances of seeing anybody was just like next to none.
Yeah.
And worse than that, it was in the Baltic.
Mm.
Yeah, in the Baltic, that's a really cold water.
Yeah.
So I'm a scuba diver, and I can tell you that even in the Caribbean, I mean, if even with a wetsuit, but obviously that guy didn't have a wetsuit, but even with a wetsuit in the Caribbean, I mean, if you were just in the ocean, eventually you're going to get tired and get cold. I mean, eventually it won't
Sure.
take that long, so if you don't have a wetsuit on, it doesn't take long at all in the Caribbean to get cold.
Well,
So
it's not like a huge ship like that can just stop immediately and spin right around. I mean, it's going to take a while to get back around.
yeah. And so anyway, I couldn't find anybody out there. And eventually the Oscar crew came up. That's what they call it.
Hmm.
There's actually a bunch of crew members, and they come up dressed up, and they're looking around, but I mean I'm not going to find anybody in the water for 17 hours late.
Yeah.
So, you know, and the reason they know that is because of the cameras. They they had cameras out there on deck six, which they usually do. Even back then in 2011, they typically would have cameras. Now I'm sure there's cameras everywhere on cruise ships,
Sure.
but they did that because people would jump sometimes, and they saw him. I mean, they on the camera. He was a Filipino guy, I think a waiter, and what they said was that he had gotten a phone call from back home, and his wife, I guess, was not being true to him and was with another man or something like that. And he just decided that he was just going to jump off the ship.
Yeah,
And
I thought I remember you
so,
telling me that he had been on there for a long contract. It wasn't just like a 1 month thing.
yes,
He had been on there for a while, and that he had told his wife he was getting home in, 2 days or whatever it was, and that's when she broke the news that she was with somebody else or something like that.
yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was. I remember that detail too. That he was almost ready to disembark, and yeah, I think they had kids too.
Yeah,
So
I remember you saying that.
yeah. So anyway, I mean, it's a problem for people that are out there on ships. It's also a problem when people go out on the ships and then they have a girlfriend or boyfriend on the ship, and they're keeping it secret from their wife or their husband back home.
Oh, yeah, for
So
sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they called those vacation ships. That's what they called them on. So it was pretty common, and not everyone, of course, did that, but it was enough. It was enough that people would joke around about it, and
Sure. Yeah. Well, and when you're with somebody like that all the time, they talk about, you have a work wife or a work husband, and it's the same kind of thing. And I think people, I'm sure when if you live in Indiana, but you're in the Caribbean, you feel like you're far enough away that nobody will ever find out, but somehow it always comes out.
yeah, yeah. So that was a really sad story. Um, but yeah, I think it probably just added more to that. Just the questioning of like, why in the world are we here, and what.
Sure.
You know, I think what was so disheartening for me is just the lack of redemption of all the brokenness, and that life was really a tragedy. It's like people live and they die and nothing really makes any sense, and the ones that don't commit suicide, of course, they eventually get to the end of their life anyway, and they just look back and think, wow, that was a mixed bag, of
Right. Sure.
what did
Yeah.
what did any of it mean. In fact,
Yeah.
I used to have I had a t-shirt, a teacher gave it to me, of all people, and it was a comic strip. I wish I still had it. I think I do somewhere, but it's a baby, and then like young adult, and then an adult, and then the last picture is an old man, and he says, "Well, that sucked."
Yeah.
And I used to think that was so funny, and I mean now I think that it's not really funny. It was a lie, because I don't think life has to be that way.
No, I think that goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, how I was saying, 70% of the time, you choose to be angry as opposed to be thankful. And as you know, it's how you look at a lot of things. There's a whole bunch of crap that goes on in your life every single day. There's a whole lot of good too, but we don't focus on this as much. We take this for granted. And so if you can shift and you can look at all the good things, then when you get to the at the end of the comic strip, you're like, you know what? That was a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good ride. But we
Mm-hmm.
have a hard time, remembering the good stuff that we have. Like I said, and I'm just as guilty as anybody, for sure. Because there's always, comparison is the thief of joy, right? There's always somebody out there that seems to have more than you do, or they are in better shape than you are, and they've got more money and they go to cooler places. It's especially in our social
Mm-hmm.
media world where everything is just it's just a highlight reel, you know. Um
Mm-hmm.
it's very easy to see what you don't have rather than just focus on all the good that we do have.
Yeah, it reminds me of Herman, and he wasn't actually the pastor, but sometimes he would preach, and he was a missionary. And but anyway, he gave a sermon, and it was called the having an attitude of gratitude.
Hmm.
And I always remembered that. And yeah, I think that it is important to try to do that. Also, it reminds me of you know what Jesus said when his disciples were arguing about who would get to sit closer to him in the kingdom. And
Yeah.
Jesus is basically saying, you don't know what you're asking for right now, because the people that sit closer to God are people that serve, and the people that drink the cup, of persecution, and maybe even being martyred. But I think he makes it really clear that, and I think this goes back to what you're saying. I think that keeping in mind that it's when we serve God, we really like we surrender, we choose that daily surrender, and then we're serving Him, and saying, okay, my way, I'm just not gonna worry about it because it doesn't ever fulfill me anyway, and I'm gonna do it God's way. I'm gonna serve, and I mean, like what you had said a few minutes ago about the Catholic school being surprising. That was surprising for me too. But I think as I was serving as a middle school teacher, I could see the grace of what God was doing,
Yeah.
and that redemption of trying to be that teacher and having that opportunity finally. The teacher I'd never had, I could finally be that guy for these
Yeah.
kids, and that was very fulfilling. And like I said, if I would have been doing it my way, I never would have chosen that. But
Sure.
now looking back, I realize, wow, that was a blessing. And what a gift. It was really hard too. I'm not going to say it was easy, but it was really hard, but it was also a real blessing.
Yeah.
And there's that redemption now that I feel as I look back at my own history. I can
Right.
see that God did something. He used the getting made fun of and getting bullied in the Catholic schools and the bad stuff, but then he redeemed it because I could be the one to help the younger generation, um, in a Catholic school.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I think keeping that in mind, that really serving is the way. And there's a reward for those people that choose to serve. And if you can try to get through the day and say, okay, I'm going to have the attitude of gratitude, and Lord, how can I serve? What can I do? And I have a lot of stories about that. When you can really pray that way,
Yeah.
it is remarkable
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
know. And I'll
Yeah,
just
absolutely. I
yeah.
think, and what you're obviously a testament to it. And those stories I hope we can talk about in the future for sure. But just seems like a good place to wrap it up today. First of all, thank you for taking the time out, brother. I appreciate it. I want to do this 100 more times in the future. Uh, I miss you now that you moved away, and I always love talking to you and connecting. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And like I said, we'll do it again soon. Tell your wife I said hello, and I'll look forward to it another time, my man.
Okay, can I pray for you just for a quick second here before we?
100%.
Okay, Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, Holy Spirit, we call upon your presence. Lord, I just want to special blessing over Matt and doing. Lord, pray that you will work your just work your way into everything, Lord, and just let this be redeeming for Matt, but also growing the kingdom, Lord. We just pray protection around him as he's uh, just trying to follow you, and pray this for me. Put your fortress of protection around me, and please give Matt and me more opportunities to use our music for your glory, and just to continue to keep walking in step with you, Jesus. We pray this in your name. Um, okay, I think it may have cut out
Yeah, you've
there
read
for
the
a
bomb.
second, but
It's all right. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Amen. I didn't know when you were done there. Yeah, if it froze. So thank you, man. I appreciate it. We'll be in touch. I love you, brother.
okay.
Have a good evening,
Yep,
man.
love you too, man.
All right, man.
Okay, yep,
Take
talk to you
care,
soon.
dude.
Ahsanoma Namaheya. Ahsanoma Namaheya. Sending love your way. It's a hey.